I'm with the International Mountain Bicycling Association, and we are work around the world promoting mountain bike advocacy. And we also have a fee-based consulting and construction arm called IMBA Trail Solutions. I'm the IMBA Director of Construction and Operations for that program. And on this team, I'm playing the role of a senior planner. Steve Kusacek is our project manager and our lead planner on this. He is currently deep in the backwoods of Maine today, far from a cell phone. And Sarah Kovacic is another planner who's helping us with our graphics and remote work. Trail Solutions, we've been doing natural surface trails, shared use, and mountain bike for the past 20 years. And we've written several of the books that are the body of knowledge surrounding shared use and sustainable trails and mountain bike management. Most recent one was the Guidelines of the Quality Trail Experience, which we co-did the work with the Bureau of Land Management. And on this team, we're also in coordination with our staff. We're also working closely with a couple of folks from both Drew from the city of Morgantown and then Vika Haas from WVU, who's been assisting with some of the work in Morgantown as well. And where we are right now, we are in a evaluation and feasibility stage where we're looking at a variety of different potential properties, both owned by WVU and the city of Morgantown, to see what the opportunities and potential are for natural surface trails and mountain bike opportunities throughout the community. Our current timeline, this gives you an idea of where we are right now. We've done a field review of most of the sites and the opportunity analysis. We're currently doing a high-level findings review with yourselves and with the WVU leadership. After this, we're going to do public stakeholder engagement via Story Map tool. This is a tool that's been developed by Esri that allows us to have interactive online maps and report documents available for folks, and then they can leave comments that are geo-referenced. So it's much like the effect you would have with an in-person stakeholder meeting where people can put thumbtacks on the maps, but all this can be done remotely. And we're expecting it to be actually to get more stakeholder engagement using this than we would with public meetings because of the ability for folks to do it on their own time at their own pace. This fall also we'll be returning in October to do additional field design on select WVU properties with a joint WVU and IMBA team, and additional field review of both the City of Morgantown and WVU sites to inform the planning work that we're doing, ground truthing certain select trail alignments. And then late this fall, the trails plan will be available for, the final draft will be available for review. And then we hope this winter to identify some demonstration projects for 2021. And in the spring of 2021, initiate those demonstration projects. Why Morgantown? Morgantown has some amazing existing assets. It's not just about mountain biking, it's about outdoor recreation in general. And Morgantown has great paddling opportunities, both developed and undeveloped. Same with climbing. And with mountain biking, we're not as terrain sensitive as climbing or paddling. So the existing terrain you already have for those two sports makes it really special. And then the copious amount of public land nearby Morgantown and within Morgantown gives us a lot of opportunity to develop great mountain biking, world-class mountain biking. And the outstanding landscapes, the Cheat Canyon, you have epic world-class places right in your backyard that we think will create a huge destination for folks both to travel and visit and also to live there. So we think Morgantown's primed to become one of the premier outdoor cities in North America. And why mountain bike trails? Well, mountain bike trails are incredibly popular. They support the active lifestyle. They're age-friendly to folks of all ages. They're not as terrain dependent as other outdoor recreation opportunities. So we can fit them into places and fit them into communities on undeveloped pieces of open space or land. Including some places that may not be incredibly attractive even from an open space perspective, but we can use them as trail corridors. And demonstrated again and again that trails and mountain bike trails create economic benefits. They increase property value increase job opportunities, improve value of life, and we can make places very desirable to live by putting more trails in there, trails that people want to ride. And mountain biking is only part of the outdoor recreation industry. The outdoor rec economy is huge, and this is a viable alternative for economic development in places that already have a lot of rural land and epic landscapes. You can see the numbers here in terms of other industries. Outdoor recreation is right up there with the big hitters. And this is something that we see. West Virginia has a huge opportunity here to capitalize on its natural resources and outdoor open spaces. And Morgantown has the potential to be a model and a showcase to lead the state forward in that way. Recruiting both businesses and employees for businesses is always challenging. And in the past, we would see people move to areas because of the economic opportunities. Now it's much more likely that we see people to moving to areas because of the lifestyle opportunities, the recreation opportunities, and figuring out how they're going to make a living later. Or we have folks who are weighing job opportunities. And one of the main factors that they're weighing is the quality of life they'll have in those places where they want to move to. So they're deciding about which jobs they will take based upon what they can do on their off hours and what opportunities are available for them. And what mountain bikers are looking for is we're looking for areas where we can get exercise, where we can challenge ourselves, places that have enough diversity of trail and diversity of opportunities not to get bored and to feel like you always have something else new, and places where we can ride right out the back door, where the bike's not a car decoration, where you can hop on your bike and 5 or 10 minutes later be on a trail. And West Virginia offers numerous locations and opportunities for discovery, the ability to challenge yourself as much as you want, regardless of from where you're coming from, and the West Virginia aesthetics, the outdoors. I was lucky enough to live in West Virginia for a couple of years, and when I left and relocated to Virginia, I wondered if I would ever live in a place as beautiful as where I lived when I lived in Slady Fork. And talk a little bit about sustainable trails and modern trails. We know there's a lot of existing trails in Morgantown. There's a lot of existing trails in West Virginia. But there's been a lot of development in the science of trails and how to provide really positive experience with minimal resource impacts, reduced maintenance costs. And we're very thoughtful and proactive about how we plan, design, and implement trails so they provide specific experiences with specific outcomes. This is a little different in the past when trails were mostly travelways or reused access routes. We go about this with a very strong purpose to achieve certain goals with trails, whether it's management tools or whether it's economic development tools, or to drive certain outcomes within a community. Outcomes-focused management. It's not just that we're giving people access to the outdoors, that we're deliberately providing specific experiences and achieving certain goals with those trails. As trail designers and planners, we have the glorious opportunity to determine folks' adventure and what they get out of the landscape. And sustainability has multiple different factors. There's the environmental sustainability. This is about preventing erosion, being light on the land, low impact to other important resources, making sure in the planning process we're avoiding those impacts. There's the social sustainability. Is it achieving the desired goals? Is it getting people out in the woods? If it's a shared use trail, is it truly a successful shared use trail for all the trail visitors? And economic sustainability, is the style of trail and type of trail on that landscape maintainable and supportable by the revenue it either generates or by the land manager that manages it or by the volunteerism that it encourages? All of these things need to be in balance to consider a trail truly sustainable. And there's a wide variety of trails. And I'll look at this from the mountain bike perspective and describe a couple of the different mountain bike trail styles or types of trails. We have what we would consider traditional single track. West Virginia is rich in these opportunities. old school hiking style trail, narrow, wide, somewhat challenging, really determined by the lay of the land. Oftentimes, previous access routes or pre-existing trails or game trails have been adopted. Often not planned or designed, but more trails that happened. Shared use trails. These are trails that successfully accommodate a wide variety of different visitor types with different objectives. And for these to be successful, both the planning, the design, and the construction of the trail has to be intentful and purposeful towards that goal. A well-designed shared use trail may feel much like a traditional single track, but function in a different way. But it may not be apparent to all, it shouldn't be apparent to the visitors that it was as designed or planned as it was. Still gives them that wild outdoors experience, but good sight lines, control speeds well, positive signage, where it's located on the slope, how it's located on the terrain, all work together to make sure that there's not negative visitor interactions, but positive interactions between different visitors. Mountain bike optimized single track is these are trails that have been really designed and planned to provide a specific riding experience from the get-go. And this bucket of trails has a wide gamut of experiences within it. It can be smooth, it can be rocky, it can be technical, it can be easy, it can be from beginner trails up to expert level trails, but they're specifically optimized to take advantage of the physics and dynamics of a bicycle interacting with nature. Mountain bike gravity trails. These are mountain bike optimized trails that are optimized to be ridden downhill with gravity providing you the kinetic energy to propel your bike. Less pedaling, quite likely a little bit more airtime. And these are a different flavor of the mountain bike optimized single track, but incredibly popular. And one of the things that is part of the gap analysis for Morgantown, one of the things that we've identified as most missing. Bike parks, these are areas that are intentionally developed for bicycle opportunities, and they range in the spectrum from tot tracks or bicycle playgrounds aimed at children to paved pump tracks that also have great crossover with other wheeled users. Skateboarders, scooters, rollerbladers also work great with paved pump tracks. These are shots from Arkansas and from Europe. And dirt jumps and flow trails. These are from another one of your, what I would consider part of your cohort of trail cities, Knoxville, Tennessee, and one of their world-class jump trails. Any questions so far about sustainable trails, mountain bike trails?
Going once.
All right, so I mentioned a little bit our gap analysis. I'm going to hit on some of the existing conditions that we found at the trails in Morgantown City Parks. So user-created, enthusiast-driven trails with very typical features of trails of that style. Limited spectrum of difficulty level, focused on the upper, intermediate, lower expert category. Not a lot of opportunities for beginners, not a lot of opportunities for high level, a lot of the middle, not a lot of progression, and a bit of a smorgasbord. Very easy features right next to very difficult features. Challenging to navigate because of the new number of intersections, frequently poor sight lines, insufficient signage, and not a lot of differentiation in trail style or trail type. Much felt like what was built was what the builder that day was hoping to have. And challenging for a visitor to navigate and have an enjoyable experience on. Very much gave a locals only kind of feel. And in some areas, likely due to insufficient planning or construction, damage from erosion, and insufficient maintenance on certain features. And this this leads both to an unsatisfactory visitor experience and potentially to increased liability. So the existing trails in Morgantown we found had great potential in the landscapes and in some of the trail systems, but we didn't find that they were utilizing those landscapes or highlighting the opportunities that are available. Not optimized for shared use. So quite likely there's more visitor conflict than there needs to be. And also that means that there's reduced carrying capacity. That there's the same landscapes could have trails on them that could have significantly more visitor passes per week, and it would have seemed like there were less people in there. And the trails felt very 1999. They didn't reflect modern trails or what a lot of folks are looking for and seeking now in terms of the riding experiences. So some of the goals that we were provided when we undertook the planning was to have 100 miles of trail within 25 minutes, and then eventually 150 miles within 25 minutes, to become a regional trail destination, followed by a national trail destination, and to become a model trail community that could serve as an example and a inspiration for the rest of West Virginia. The opportunities that we've determined are viable, yes, Morgantown can very much become a model trails town, and in some way, unique in some ways. It's only been replicated in a couple other areas. The IMBA Ride Center designation is an international award that's done through a review process by IMBA. There's IMBA Ride Centers nationally and around the world. There's only a couple of two gold level ride centers at this point. And Morgantown, we saw, definitely has the ability to earn a ride center designation, quite likely in the silver or gold category, depending upon the opportunities that are taken advantage of. Very much the opportunity to do youth-specific experiences, especially near where there are already youth-specific facilities in the city parks. One of the biggest missing opportunities that we saw was bike-specific park amenities in terms of bike parks, and the opportunity to create a large diversity of trail types and difficulty levels so that there would be a broad appeal and such a large spectrum that no one would ever get bored with the riding opportunities. And then combined with WVU, Morgantown has the opportunity to become a place where people come to learn about trails and to do research and answer some of the questions about trails that still remain unanswered for natural surface trail science. Some of the positive outcomes for the community would be improved quality of life property value for the residents, improve employers' ability to recruit and retain staff, especially from outside of the community, the ability to convert more students to taxpayers, and increase the tourism draw, benefits for residents. Having trails out the back door always encourages folks to ride more or hike more. The opportunity to have trails immediately adjacent to schools and make it very easy for school programs to get folks out, get kids out in the woods, both for outdoor classroom activities and for outdoor athletic activities. Some of the specific trail opportunities we identified, and this is just on some of the areas we looked at. And again, this is initial feasibility. It's quite likely with additional time on the ground, some of these numbers would get larger because we're fairly conservative in our initial analysis. Well over 100 miles of trail. That one of the really special things about this is that the trails wouldn't just be recreation trails. Given how the parks and open space weaves through the community, that these could be trails that would provide opportunity for folks to be transportation as well. And there's only a handful of communities in the US where you can ride single track or hit a gravity trail on your way to work or on your way to school. And Morgantown could easily be one of those communities. That's Bentonville, Arkansas. One of their main advertising campaigns to recruit folks is has a video that has someone riding, going to work, and then in their suit doing a presentation, hopping back on the bike, going back and forth. Really pushing that mantra of like it's right there the whole time. The other thing we saw is that there's a great proximity between the open space and the educational institutions, both schools and the university. And the level of terrain, from fairly level to incredibly steep, rocky, non-rocky, allows for diverse trail opportunities, both in this type of trail and in the difficulty level of the trails. And what sets Morgantown apart? You have an incredible landscape. You have a city nestled in hills with rivers right nearby it. You have the Cheat Canyon out your back door, an epic landscape available and waiting as a glorious canvas to put trails on. Two, you have a very significant rail trail system that's already been developed that can serve as the spine and the backbone for a natural surface trail system and provide great connectivity. And thirdly, you have a team that's pushing and working on this at the WVU level and at the city level that has significantly impressed us with their abilities to make things happen and to express the potential of this project to various stakeholder groups. So those things together make us feel that this has a great opportunity to be something truly special and to really make Morgantown one of the premier trail cities. I mentioned the Mon River Trail system and the Decker Creek Rail Trail, 48 miles of existing trail. And one of the things that this says to us, besides it being a backbone, is that this trail system exists. We see far more dreams of trails than we see reality. And the fact that this has come to be says that there has been huge cooperation between various entities and that there are stakeholders in the community who have vision and the willingness to go ahead and see that vision through to make a trail system like this a reality. We see this as a litmus test and a testimony to how effective folks in Morgantown have been in the past. And that means to us that the potentials that we're putting on the ground here, the possible trail opportunities are that much more likely to become reality. And we're willing to propose things that we might not in a community that hasn't demonstrated the ability to make things happen like this in the past. Thanks for all the hard work you've done so far. Other trail cities that we would look at as comparison: Richmond, Virginia; Chattanooga, Tennessee; my hometown of Harrisonburg, Virginia; Asheville, North Carolina; Bend, Oregon; Flagstaff, Arizona; Boise, Idaho; Bentonville, Arkansas, where the photo's taken. All of these are renowned as places where people move because of the trail-based lifestyles that are available. And Morgantown has the opportunity not just to stand with these other communities, but quite likely to offer a better trail experience than these other communities do. The opportunity's there. Well over 100 miles of trail. That's within 15 minutes of every resident. Multiple different parks connected together, providing a variety of different experiences. So irregardless of what style of ride or what style of run or hike you want to go on, it's all available there. With specifically multiple sections of gravity trail, which from a mountain biker's perspective is going to be incredibly important. Not that there's not just a good amount of it, but there's a good variety of it as well. And then the fact that this is all happening in the backyard. The connectivity that you can ride from home or to school or to work, catch a little bit of trail on the way there or the way back. This is a huge quality of life improvement. And this is a big deal, that it's not confined. A lot of cities have park opportunities where you can ride a little bit, 5 miles or 10 miles, but that's all you have available. The interconnectivity of the trail systems in Morgantown, especially when combined with the rail trails, provide opportunities to, one, reach out to epic backcountry and long shuttle descents nearby, but also that when you go for that ride out your back door, you've always got in the back of your mind that you could just keep riding, potentially for days if you wanted to. That there's always that potential adventure just waiting right around the corner. And that's an incredible feeling, especially to have that right from your door. So that's why we see Morgantown as being incredibly special. Any questions before we dive into a little more detail about the sites we looked at?
Hey, Rich, can you talk a little bit about how the project got started and what the Trail Accelerator process is like that WVU was engaging on?
So through the generosity of some of our sponsors, IMBA runs a Trail Accelerator grant program, which is a matching grant program which provides technical services for the Trail Solutions program to assist with planning, design, and education services to facilitate and spark trail projects. And WVU, they attended, WVU and Drew, a coalition from Morgantown attended a Trails Labs in Bentonville, Arkansas, and then applied for a Trail Accelerator grant, and WVU was awarded that. And we are simultaneously with the city of Morgantown engaging with a planning process with WVU. So this is we're looking at this as a holistic trail network across the entire Morgantown community with 2 different partners engaged in the process. That answer the question, Drew?
Thank you. Yeah. Emily, it seemed like you were maybe standing up to ask something. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks. Obviously, I caught the very tail end here once we're already into questions. So I can circle up with Drew after the meeting and get caught up to speed. But thanks. I don't have any questions right now.
Okay, we've had multiple different places for questions, and we'll have more presentation. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I believe it's been recorded so far. So if you do want to watch the first part of the presentation, it's there. It's been very high level so far. What we're going to go into next is we're going to go over the actual draft plan we've produced. And I will ask folks that this is a high level review of our initial findings and the opportunities we've identified. We do ask for feedback at this point on any opportunities that we didn't identify or any challenges that we haven't raised. We will make the draft maps and plan available for review and comments in a couple of weeks. So as we go over the next couple of pages, it'll probably be a little quicker than everybody can read them or go into them in depth. If you do want to read them in detail, they will be available and you can provide comments on those, and we would welcome those comments. The more informed we are and the more feedback we get, the stronger the plan is going to be and the more viable it's going to be to put into place. We're also going to be doing further field evaluation this fall. So if there are opportunities that we haven't identified or places we haven't looked at, please let us know so we can do the best job possible in this analysis. And hang on a second, I'm going to switch PowerPoints.
While you're switching those PowerPoints to the rest of you on this call, what we did initially with IMBA was, once the city decided to engage with the planning process, we offered up essentially every one of the parcels that was owned by the city for initial high-level analysis. So that was basically anything that was over about an acre or attached to larger other parcels that would total over an acre. Most of those smaller parcels did not make the cut. And so a lot of their analysis focused on larger opportunities, but some small parcels were identified. The initial analysis was just under 1,000 acres. For city-owned land. And I think it's undetermined how many thousand of WVU land is analyzed at this point.
And there is at least one parcel we didn't get a chance to lay physical eyes on this summer that we'll be taking a look at this fall, and taking a second look at a bunch of the properties we already looked at. Especially as we get more feedback from folks. This is a very iterative process, and as we get more data points, we can take a look at things closer and get closer to moving towards the design process.
Alex, did you have a question?
I was going to ask something, but it may be a better question to wait till the end. I'm just curious about how and what is the best way to try to approach people on private property to make them feel comfortable with extending a trail through their property, and like what are some good bargaining points in that conversation?
Rich, if you want to answer that now, we could take some time, or it does sound like it might be a better question for the end.
I'm currently working on a trail project in Virginia where we're working with 40 different private landowners and no public land management agency to negotiate trail access across 40 different private parcels, ranging from 2,000 acres to less than an acre in size. And we found the best tactic has been to contact people face to face and go to their houses and invite them. And we haven't gone public with any of the plan until we've talked to every one of the parcel owners and gotten their feedback. Tested the water with them, offered them different opportunities. There's always concerns about being able to explain the liability to them, what the opportunities are for conservation easements for tax burden reduction, especially for the larger property owners, combining combined tax conservation with trail easements, outright acquisitions. If people are interested in that, land swaps. There's sometimes a adjacent parcel owner is willing to sell, and then we can trade part of that land with a neighbor. And that's there's been a variety of different techniques, but the most important thing seems to have been interacting with those people first, face to face, before they ever see a line on a map in public. If we want to get a no, publishing a map with a line across the property seems to be the most effective technique.
All right, thank you.
There's also something unique that has happened in West Virginia, not completely unique, but our recent legislature a couple of years ago created a series of trail authorities that are able to work across public and private entities and across county lines. You all may be familiar with the Hatfield-McCoy trail system down in Logan and Boone counties and maybe McDowell. And so that structure was unique in that part of the state, and they have since expanded it to other parts of the state. And so Morgantown has an authority that is currently being developed, the Mountaineer Trail Network. There's at least 10 counties that are involved, all up here in that. So the key part of that legislation was a more clear ability to offer trails through private property without experiencing typical liability. So essentially, if you ensure that it's public access, then there is just an inherent assumption of risk on this, and the property owner, if they're within this network and they've signed agreements with the trail authority, they are not personally typically liable, and I'm sure Ryan would be able to pick apart exactly what I just said in many ways, but hopefully I got the gist of that across decently.
I'll move on. We can definitely entertain questions about private property owners, but that'll be one of the moving forward with this plan and some of the connectivity. There will need to be some opportunities evaluated on private land as well as on the city and the WVU parcels. But moving forward with the city and the WVU parcels will give us good demonstration projects and proof of concepts that'll probably make those conversations with private landowners easier to have once we demonstrate the value and the potential economic benefit to those private landowners of having trails on the property, especially if they're going to be doing housing or either residential or commercial development. So this is overall just a large-scale map that shows the whole potential area that we've evaluated, both Morgantown and all the way out to the University Forest above Cooper's Rock. And then a zoomed-in version of the area just within the town itself. And the first zone, White Park, has existing infrastructure, existing trail system. And really the opportunities we see there is modernizing the trail system, making it easier to navigate, making more unified trail experiences, expanding the spectrum of trail experiences on both ends, filling out the bell curve. Right now it's very much in the center of the curve and need to provide the opportunities at both ends. And then potential for play and gravity zones for skill development, as well as improved signage signage that extends from the park along city streets to provide on-street connectivity to other parks, much like the James River Park system in Richmond does. And put the whole draft plan in here, mostly so that you can see the level that we're going to with the analysis, even if it's not possible to read it all at this point, or I apologize if it's not fully legible on some screens. But again, these documents will be available for everybody to review in detail in a draft form before we go to the final and be able to incorporate your comments in the final. If we do have anything that during that process that seems needs to be addressed in more depth, we can then go back and do additional feedback loops to make sure we get things right. And these are the style of maps, the zoomed in maps that we're doing. This shows 2 zones. Murillo Park and Second City Park. The greatest opportunities we saw here were on the forested slopes adjacent to the developed areas, and then specifically a paved pump track next to the skate park, because the paved pump track fits well with the already pre-existing activity on the skate park. You can take the skateboards into the paved pump track as well, give them a little bit different opportunity. Blends well with that. The other nice opportunity we saw there was the connection to the Deckers Creek Trail, how close that was. I'll skim through the WVU stuff really quickly, but just this is to emphasize how this is seen as an integrated trail system development. That both the WVU opportunities, property opportunities, and the City of Morgantown property opportunities combine to make something greater than they would on their own. That it's important for both partners to be involved to realize the potential for the Morgantown residents. Mount Vista has nice gravity park opportunities. And the woodlot already has existing trails on it and has the potential to have that trail system greatly improved to really meet the ability of that landscape. Again, as you can see, gravity trail opportunities in several locations. Again, different pockets of gravity trails, and each of these might well be of a different style or type. Some of them may just be in the beginner to intermediate level. Some of them may provide expert level. Some of them may be more downhill oriented in the places that are rockier or ledgier. Some of them may be more jump or flow oriented in the places that suit that better. Another city park, Krebs Park. This is would be the northern terminus for a larger interconnected Morgantown trail network. There's existing kids facilities already there, so a top track or a skills area would play well with that. We find that with kids facilities, it's really important to put them within easy access and preferably within sight where kids are already being active, and that makes it makes it very easy for them to get involved in those other opportunities. There's also opportunities for expanding the shared use single track. Again, almost all of the park opportunities involve some degree of shared use single track, and that's so it's a cohesive trail network for all types of visitors, and that's what ties the whole system together. That you've got the shared use single track that links everything together, works for everybody, both runners, hikers, and mountain bikers, and provides access to specific pockets of single-use trails that provide experiences that would not be desirable for people to engage in on a shared use trail. And providing some of those single-use experiences are very important for managing and preventing unauthorized trail development. Almost always, if we see unauthorized trail development, especially gravity trail stuff, it's a sign of an unmet demand. And the best way to avoid that is to provide that experience in a managed and responsible fashion, rather than having users develop them themselves when they don't have the knowledge about how to avoid the resource impacts or the risk management. You can see the proximity for Krebs to the Arboretum and to the university property itself. Dorsey's Knob Park provides opportunities both for a non-forested gravity park area, which might be very nice for a high visibility jump zone, good for events, as well as for more shared use single track. Mayfield Park is a little bit different. This is further away from the city center, but on the way towards Snake Hill. And the 200 acres here provides a bigger parcel, both again, an opportunity for a larger gravity system, as well as for more extensive shared use trail opportunities. Lots of good rocks and boulders here as well. So the gravity trails here may be more rocky or technically oriented rather than smooth flow oriented. Coben Creek is the one area we haven't been able to visit in person yet. And we also need to do better analysis on the parking and connectivity opportunities to determine if this area is feasible. This is where the new dam is going to go and the new water reservoir is going to go. There are very good examples of places like Carvin's Cove and Roanoke City, Virginia, where both aquatic recreation and terrestrial recreation around the reservoir have been a positive benefit both for the water management team as well as for the recreationalists. It's always nice to have a lot of eyes and ears on your property like that for folks who really care about it. Creates great passive security. And sustainable trails, in terms of protecting water quality, minimizing erosion, sustainable trails are going to be one of the best ways to go ahead and do that. We have seen other areas that have attempted to limit public access near the reservoirs, and instead it have ended up with an ad hoc, unsustainable network of social trails rather than a well-planned and sustainable network of managed trails. And then on the campus itself, there's the opportunity for trails within inside of built areas, very similar to some of the single track sidewalk that's been developed in Bentonville, where single track features and trails have been developed literally between the sidewalk and the side of the road on a 15-foot wide grass mowed strip. So mini campuses provide a lot of opportunity in places like that, where we can both showcase the fact there's mountain bike trails and provide a fun level of connectivity through the campus environment. The University Forest is by far the largest parcel that's out there. There are definitely pre-existing uses that need to be accounted for. It is a research forest, and this also allows us to potentially engage in trail research and the mixing of forest management with recreational trails. We do work on we do trails on a lot of managed forests, and it would be great to have better studies done and science done about that. So again, another opportunity that creates the larger Morgantown Trail network opportunity. I'm going to jump back to the other. So if there's any parcels that we didn't look at that folks think we should, or any places that we looked at that we should stay away from, now is a great time to let us know. Or you can let Drew know separately if you'd rather not speak up in the meeting. But we would much, if there's places that are out there that we don't know about or aren't on our list, we will definitely have an opportunity to look at them in October. And if there's places that we've said, hey, would be great for this, and there's an unknown constraint for that property that we haven't mentioned, or that would make what we've suggested not viable, please let us know.
I had another question, if it's a good time.
Sure.
So the Mayfield Road property, I actually own a piece of property adjacent to that. And historically, people have been allowed to like ride horses on that property and like there's trails through it and stuff. And I just wonder if the overlap of bicycles and horses is a good use, or would you have to basically take one side or the other?
We work on a variety of trails that are shared use with equestrians. We wouldn't recommend mixing gravity trails with equestrian use, but shared use trails can be developed that work well with equestrians. And then there's definitely, it's both a matter of doing the trail design and construction properly, and then activating the trails in the right way. It's important to both educate mountain bikers and equestrians how to behave around each other. There's things that, yeah, need to train each other how to do it. We've worked in the Wissahickon Valley in Philadelphia, very popular with equestrians and with mountain bikers. Extensive experience in Northern Virginia, working both with equestrians and mountain bikers. And we can share trails together. It's definitely, I will say that every time you add an additional use onto a trail segment, you have to reduce some of the experience for both user groups. There's a little bit of a lowest common denominator. Every type of visitor or every type of modality has a little bit different physics in terms of their soil displacement characteristics, and in terms of their goals and how they interact with other visitor types. And so in order to accommodate each one of those visitor types adds a few additional constraints. So we can make it work, but generally we find that if we're making a 3-way or a 4-way shared use trail, such as where we might have a motorized use as well as equestrians and mountain bikes and hikers on there, or snow use as well, we have to make that trail closer and closer to a beginner trail. Sight lines become very important. Doing things to limit everybody's speed, making sure that we're going uphill before every intersection for all the visitors, so everybody's slowed down before any interactions. But it can be done. But we've also seen places where they've chosen to have dual trail systems on the same piece of property for 2 different types of users. Some of this depends upon in the larger framework of the region. If there's a lot of shared use trails between those 2 visitor types, it might be advantageous to have them share trails in that area. If there's no other examples of sharing trails like that in the area, it may be easier socially to have them have separate trail networks. Again, that also depends upon the size of the property as well. I would say a similar size property would be a Rosaryville State Park outside of Washington, D.C., that has shared use trails with hikers and mountain bikes, and some of the trails are shared and some of them aren't shared. So that also provides a mix of opportunities in those areas.
Thank you.
So a brief review of the timeline, similar to the timeline we started the presentation with, but with some additions to it. And one of the things I'd be most interested in hearing from the city leadership is about the implementation timeline. We hope to have the master plan final draft ready for review by late fall this winter. We believe stakeholders would like to identify the first demonstration projects for 2020, that those are likely to be undertaken on WVU property, but possibly on city property if interest is there, and likely to be undertaken with existing resources, volunteers, students. And the idea, these would be small scale demonstration projects to really put into action and determine what some of the refining cost estimates, creating showcase products to, especially for facilities that don't currently exist in Morgantown. So it's easier to have the conversations about larger styles of those facilities. And then spring and fall of 2021, focusing on the design process, fundraising, and identifying phase 1 projects. And these would be full-scale projects to be implemented quite likely in 2022 and beyond. And one of the questions I had is this something that, how aggressive should the implementation schedule be that we recommend? Are we looking at 5 years for the whole city, 10 years, 15 years? We do recommend a little bit of a phased implementation just to build understanding within the city residents about what's being put down, and that there'll be greater cost savings with a phased implementation because you can figure out things in the first phase that then will provide cost savings in future phases. And also the ability to develop greater knowledge within your volunteer base and within your staff base about these projects. So there's less overhead cost in future phases. And you get more of a tourism buzz and buzz outside of the area because there's constantly new projects going on for several years. Any thoughts on phasing or other questions about the analysis we've done so far?
One of the things that I think is a major inherent asset of this type of project is that it's relatively low cost from an individual project standpoint, and so therefore very easy to do, relatively fine-grained phasing that is easier to fundraise for, easier to allocate funds for. So yeah, I appreciate you discussing the phasing aspect of this.
And that some of this, it's definitely possible to phase the design as well, where the actual alignments and the permitting for the various alignments don't occur until prior to the construction, that enough planning is done to raise funds, whether it be through grant funding, private donation, capital budget requests, and that those can be also the individual champions can be located within the community for different phases or different park portions, where folks may be interested in one parcel but not necessarily in another, and that allows to focus those resources specifically on those projects. Any feedback? Oh.
Yeah. I'm a policymaker. I'm a member of the city council and a former mayor. And I'm interested in having some demonstration projects happen on city property, because otherwise this will have a reputation of being a university project. And I would really like to make it a university city project. So unless some of the demonstration, from the get-go, I think some of the demonstration projects should be on city property if possible, and possibly near the dam along the river or something like that, where it's visible to the community. I'm interested in, as we were talking about this earlier, we were talking about the importance of having beginner trails and flow trails and trails that appeal to a wide spectrum of people, along with the gravity trails and the other trails that you would obviously need to have to make this into a world-class mountain biking area. But we noticed, my family has two 60-plus-year-olds, and then a 5-year-old, and then my son, who's just shy of 30. So he will go on anything, but the rest of us like pretty beginner trails. The 5-year-old is riding on a nice Trek bike, and that he really enjoys, and he can go on beginner mountain biking trails, but they really have to be seriously beginner trails. And my husband and I are at the stage where we can't go on the giant trails anymore because we're more risk adverse than we used to be.
Yep.
So for families that have younger kids or people who are retirement age who might be more risk adverse, I think it really is important to have flow trails, actual beginner trails instead of advanced beginner trails, because we really had fun when we were just in northern Wisconsin on some really nice planned trails. And we had fun when it was an actual beginner trail, but as soon as it was an advanced beginner trail, the 5-year-old was freaking out. And it's fun when you're on a planned trail. So I'm just sort of speaking in support, and I'm excited that you look at the Coben Reservoir area, because as that project is being built, apparently they were willing to rough out, if it didn't cost them anymore as far as construction goes, they would rough out areas or make areas in a way that then when we were working to develop trails later, they would be more prepared. The areas would be more prepared. While they had heavy equipment in there, they would be willing to do that. So
Seems like
it'd
parking.
so it'd be parking, just like, I don't know if we wanted benches certain places, or just however we wanted it to look.
One question at a time. You've had 3 so far, so that we can respond.
I'm always a 3, but I just wanted to just mention that. The other thing is, there's a few
4
areas
now.
that probably
Come
have 4. Sorry, then I'll be quiet. This has been a long time coming. There are probably some sensitive areas, plant-wise, that maybe I could just point out with Drew, in Krebs Park, in the Arboretum, just some places that there's some amazing wildflowers that you just don't want a mountain bike trail anywhere near. So
I'll roll through those backwards.
yeah.
First off, thank you very much for the statement of support. Yeah, okay. Actually, we'll start. We'll go right in the chronological order. Having a demonstration projects that are both on city and WVU property, very important. And those demonstration projects should be highly visible to the public. And the ones in city property, if we want to build support for future projects, and we're asking for taxpayer support, it's critical that we make those projects relevant to folks. And the best case scenario is to make them relevant to people who currently aren't trail users by providing them trail opportunities that they currently don't have. So yeah, the first stuff we build, it'd be nice if we did a little bit of stuff for enthusiast mountain bikers, but we also need to build stuff that's going to get people on bikes, because you quite likely have more latent trail users in your community than you do active trail users. There's a lot of people out there who want to get out on trails that currently the trail offerings are quite likely a little bit on the challenging side. And we need to have that entry level, that easy ramp for people to get up to speed. And doing that where it's in the public eye is always good. If folks are going to put public money into a facility, they're going to want to see that it gets used. So we want to have that right out there where folks can see those facilities being in play. In terms of protecting the biological resources, standard practice during all trail design and planning to do resource surveys to make sure we're not impacting any cultural resources, be they paleo or historic, or damaging any critical biological resources. And here is one thing that WVU can be very helpful in. We have WVU students who are already looking for projects this fall to be engaged in terms of doing surveys, who could be assisting with plant surveys and then also assisting with surveys on potential trail corridors. But yeah, we would like to identify those communities, especially if they're communities that are valuable, but not necessarily T&E or valuable from a theft perspective, so that we can have a trail that might go near those communities and not impact them, but be useful for interpretation or outdoor education purposes in the future. One of the reasons we do the trails, one of the reasons we feel trails are important from a conservation perspective is that it creates value to public open space for folks that may not feel that they're conservationists. We can wed them to the landscape. And secondly, that we can showcase the landscape and educate people about the landscape and about why it's valuable through the trails, while minimizing impact and increasing the carrying capacity through thoughtfully placed sustainable trail design.
Perfect. The other thing that people have been mentioning a lot is connectivity. So I like seeing that as the heading of one of your connectivity. Somebody was asking why Morgantown doesn't have a connectivity plan. We do have quite a few different plans, but they wanted one that was named connectivity plan. So they appreciated that. They would appreciate that.
I'd also like to call on Mr. Danny Twilley here. Danny has joined the call halfway through to speak a little bit about the relationship between WVU and the city, and expand upon Rich's answer to Jenny's first question regarding phased approaches of who develops what first, and how we can continue to manage this town and gown relationship.
Yeah, thanks, Drew, and Jenny. I appreciate that point, and I really just want to say that we just start off by just thanking you all. It's been amazing to watch the momentum building since that kind of cold winter day in January when Greg and I had the fortunate pleasure of presenting to you all. And so, from our standpoint, at least from my office and at WVU, is that we're really going to, in terms of that phased approach, whether it's, grants, whether it is thinking about how do we do maintenance and planning, we really want to look at this as a very much a collaborative approach and allow, IMBA's expertise for what they're recommending for phasing to drive our approach to how do we fund this. And so as much as we can, we would like to try to, take those kind of darker lines that highlight the differences between university and city property and kind of make those light faded lines, especially as we look for the developing of this unique opportunity and trail system. How that plays out in practice, I'm not sure, but what I can do is promise that we'll come to the table with that approach. And we see what's best for the city kind of use in trails is great for the university and vice versa. So that's how we're going to approach it from, the grant standpoint, from potentially the funding standpoint, is really try to figure out how we can do this, continue this collaborative relationship. And it started in that room that January when we all agreed to try to do this together. And so I hope we can continue to build on that. And, if that means we have to have some hard conversations, let's have them. And we'll work through those, and then we'll celebrate together on a nice hike on these trails. So that's kind of my lens on it. And Drew or anybody else, if you have any more questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Before anybody jumps on Danny, I just want to introduce him for those of you that were not at that meeting. Danny Twilley is an assistant dean for the Office of Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative over there. Is that correct, Danny?
It is. Yep.
Yeah. And so Danny is coming to Morgantown. He just relocated from Athens, Ohio, where he had a key role in the development of the Bailey's trail system down there, which is a very exciting project down in Athens, where I believe they're currently constructing 80 miles of trails. Is that correct, Danny?
Yeah, it's 88 miles, and Rich and his team has been helping us with that. We're sometime end of October, we'll have about 24 completed, and that's in a 2-phase process. So, yeah.
Anybody have other questions they'd like to ask of Rich or Danny or me?
Hey, this is Marvin. I was just stopping in to ask about the presentation of the draft map and or the approved master plan map. Is that something that IMBA would like to have the city host on our GIS end, or is that something IMBA wants to keep on their end? And then finally, once this project, at least the master plan portion of it, is done, are we allowed access to the data that's generated from that?
We'll provide the PDF maps in the next couple of weeks, and this is for y'all's review and feedback. For the larger stakeholder engagement, I believe we're going to be using Esri's story map tool to publish those and to get feedback on those. We may wish to coordinate with the city on that. I am unfortunately not the subject matter expert on that technology. Steve will be back out of the backwoods of Maine next week, and I suspect we'll need to get him. He and you may need to have a conversation about that. Yes,
Okay.
a GIS that we can provide the data. We can provide the Esri files that we've been using. Steve and Sarah are our GIS specialists.
Okay.
I'm not allowed to play in GIS anymore.
All right. Just have them reach out to me or have them reach out to Drew, and Drew will get me in contact with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that offer. Yeah, I could see that being really useful.
One of the common comments that I hear regarding trails in Morgantown is similar to the comments that we hear about the roads in Morgantown, which is that we can't maintain what we've got, so why do we build new ones? And there's this major focus on maintenance. How much of this plan will help us to understand our current approach to maintenance, and if we do develop, our future obligations to maintenance, if we want to actually make this happen and not just build and then let deteriorate?
if the trails are successful, one, it's going to improve your successful trails are going to increase the size of your trails community significantly. So you'll have significantly more volunteers. Also, the economic impact of having the trails there should leverage funds to allow for some professional maintenance or guidance of those. Most places that have a large trail system, also, it's not uncommon to have a professional trail crew or at least a trails manager that sometimes works across jurisdictions, joint jurisdictional trail crews that provide maintenance services. Youth Corps is very common to use with the skills development approach and training and educational approach at WVU. I can see that being a portion of the WVU support as well. So there's a variety of different ways to do that, but generally we find that well-built trails and well-designed trails take into account future maintenance. One of the standard planning documents that's developed or design documents is a maintenance and operation plan. How is it going to be managed? What are the goals? And that determines the maintenance requirements and which facilities are located in which place and in what phase they're implemented would somewhat be dependent upon the ability of maintenance and how to maintain them. And this is one of the reasons why we've gone towards, especially in open areas, more hard surface trails and hard surface bike park facilities, because increased capital costs but greatly reduced maintenance costs.
Thanks.
And one of our goals in West Virginia, and this is something we were successful with in Alabama. When we started work in Alabama, there were no licensed trail contractors in the state of Alabama. There wasn't a single contractor in the state of Alabama that could bid on a federally funded competitive trails project legally and be from Alabama. And when we left, there was one, and now there's two or three. And we helped mentor those folks into being contractors. And this is something we've seen in Bentonville, Arkansas, and Northwest Arkansas. Whereas the continued growth of trails and the continued realization of how important having those trails well maintained is to the economic well-being and the property values of the local communities, they've invested in hiring contractors to help with the maintenance as well as with the volunteers. We built a trail in Georgia, went back 5 years later, building a trail in an adjacent park, and we go to the trail workday on a Saturday, volunteer workday, and this was a beginner trail we built. This is definitely a testimony towards the latent demand for trails. Not a single person in that parking lot, including the club president and club secretary, rode a bike when we built that trail 5 years before. Every mountain biker in that parking lot, everybody in that volunteer work party had become a mountain biker because of that beginner trail that had been built. And that's what we would likely see in Morgantown. If we build trails that are easy and accessible and allow people an easy entry ramp into trail-based active outdoor activity, they're going to come out of the woodwork by the hundreds. Your biggest issue in the next year would be if the supply chains for bikes aren't fixed in the next 12 and 18 months, is that it'll be difficult for people to obtain the bikes they want.
Looks like Mr. Mayor has unmuted himself. Mr. Delaney, would you like to ask a question or speak? Suppose not.
Mr. Mayor, you're muted. I don't know if you can hear us.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just wanted to just express support. I wasn't at the meeting in January, but this is all very exciting, and I would just echo maybe some of the thoughts that Councilor Saleen brought up in terms of making this even more accessible for a broader spectrum of riders. I know just bicycling in Morgantown, the terrain is challenging and discourages a lot of people from doing that. So anything we could do to get folks moving in that direction and especially engage with our trails, and I think are really will be really beneficial. I really like the way that you framed this earlier on in the conversation, in terms of designing for a purpose, whether that be economic development or otherwise. And I think that is a tremendous opportunity we have. And I can't help but think about this in the age of COVID as well, where a lot of folks are starting to question living in denser places and starting to look at moving to other places. And so I think this kind of amenity could do really well in terms of our ability to attract new folks and new industries to our community. So I just wanted to reach out and say thank you guys, and I'm looking forward to the next steps. I certainly support. I would also echo what our partners at the university said earlier, and that is that, yeah, let's keep working together and figuring out how to make this a true collaborative project for both our great university and our great city simultaneously. So again, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Look forward to working together.
Yeah, likewise.
All right, looks like we have 5 minutes left. We could end a little early, or if anybody has last minute burning questions, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Thanks for hosting, Drew.
Thank you, Alex.
Drew, how would we see, if we wanted to make comments at this early time, how would we best see, because we didn't really go through the plans, they kind of whisked across the screen. So if we wanted to look in detail and make comments to kind of inform the next round, what's the best way to really look at those maps? Like,
We will have those available as PDF documents by early September, and we'll provide those to everybody who's been on this call. If you'd like to view them in detail and to make comments or suggestions, those will be available in a PDF format for folks to review at their own time scale.
perfect, thank you.
Hey, Emily, you are unmuted. Are you want to say something?
I was just going to say thanks for all the work that you guys have done so far on this. And once we get to the next point, then it'll be good to kind of keep this moving forward.
I definitely want to.
Very astute in your noticing that I unmuted in anticipation of talking.
Trying to manage, the meeting a little bit. Yeah, I, definitely want to extend my thanks to Mr. Jeff Ray and Tim Ball from MUB for joining us as well. We all have shared interests on these different parcels, and we need to manage different uses, and so I do, really appreciate you all being in the room and taking some time to review this. Richard laid out some of the next steps, and we are likely going to have a couple of stakeholder meetings that are not high level like this, either after or during or before we release or they release the story maps. That will be targeting other people that have a skin in the game, like the county or the MPO or the Morgantown Area Partnership, right? That would be kind of the next level down, and then level below that that we'll be targeting specifically is going to be more end user focused, like neighborhood associations, bicycle pedestrian safety boards, some of the more citizen formed groups, right? So yeah, I will probably reach out to you all to make sure that I've got the lists for those individuals correct. But we've been working with WVU also to flesh out those lists. So thanks everybody very much for your time. Any last comments?
How as we go through this process, how do we handle the people who might be concerned because they live near an area, or they might see a sensitive area or whatever? At these initial stages, we were talking about talking to an individual property owner before they see a line on a map. Same with a neighborhood or other kind of interest groups.
Yeah, I mean, to me, sorry to cut you off, Rich. We have to engage them before, as Rich said, we show lines on maps.
If there are specific interest groups or known actors that are likely to strong feelings about certain areas, it would be good to reach out to them preemptively. There's a bit of human engineering in this. The other opportunity for folks is going to be through the story map facility, or story map. They'll be able to make specific points about various areas. But if in your community there are specific people that you feel are quite likely to have strong opinions or already have voiced strong opinions about certain parcels, it's probably not a bad idea to reach out to them proactively. One, they're going to feel better about being engaged in that fashion. Two, it's going to give you the opportunity to address their concerns in a way that maybe more effective than in a public setting, especially if you feel that they may be intentionally disruptive to get their way. And I'm not saying we should disregard their feelings in any way, but sometimes there are folks that are best addressing their concerns and handling their issues are sometimes better done in a small group setting than a big one.
Precisely. And the more that this plan shows connectivity, the easier it will be to sell to all the different groups, because people are really looking for that.
If there are people that have specific, I would go beyond just the word conservationist, but preservationist concerns about use of undisturbed public open space for outdoor recreation. It may be possible I'll be accompanying Steve on the visit during October, and I'd be glad to speak with one or two of those individuals or a group of those folks about those concerns and about how the bigger picture about conservation and open space and trails, and how important we see trails and developing the next generation as a constituency to protect open space, and how we see trails as a way to teach folks who don't live in rural areas, who live in a city, how to value open space and how important that is. So that for folks who do have those strong conservation values, they can see the importance of trails in developing future allies and carrying that flag on to the next generation.
Nice. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, for your time and your support. The opportunities Morgantown have for trails are great, and we look forward to continuing the work and continuing making Morgantown one of the premier trail cities in the U.S.
Thank you.
See you all. If anybody would like to, for some reason, review the recording of this, please let me or Andrew Stacy know. Andrew did record it, and we can get you that. So, thanks so much.
Thanks.